Welcome back. This tutorial is on the low poly flux controllers, those boxes at the end of the warp engines. If you like these tutorials or find them helpful, then please remember to like, subscribe, and click the notification bell icon to be notified when I post new tutorials. Welcome back, YouTube viewers. I forgot to show the low poly version of those, I'm trying to remember, I think they were called Enterflux channel controllers at the back of the warp engines, the boxes, the squares. While I was setting up for a shot for this tutorial, I realized that an angulation of the camera was reminding me of something. I had turned off the orthographic view, and I kind of had the camera like this, and I said, hey, wait a minute, that reminds me of something. And it reminded me of this shot. Now this is from Where No Man Has Gone Before. How do you know that, you say, figurative audience that may or may not be there? Of course, that's silly. Sorry, I'm having fun. I haven't been feeling well this is the third day, so I do apologize if I sound a little nuts. But you can see, just barely, you can see on the impulse engine here, they've got several round ports painted in. It's just black circles over the existing structure. There's not much actually lit yet. A lot of these things, details are just painted on. There's no flashing light here yet. And there's no detailing on the impulse engine doors yet, plus this dome is larger than it is during production. And of course, the final kicker is that the dish is still at its original width. It's this huge deflector dish out front. And so while I had the camera in a similar angle, I just rendered it out to see, you know, are we close? And I think since it actually reminded me of a shot, that yeah, we're close. You know, is it perfect? No, I'm not doing the Where No Man Has Gone Before Enterprise. I didn't take the time to, you know, perfectly match the lighting or the camera angle, and yet still it reminds me of that shot. So I think we're doing okay. I hope you guys are satisfied so far. Now, here's that box I was talking about, and the reason why I put it on the side is if you care to, you can count that there are 17 of these up, and there are, of course, 16 waves on the inside, and a fast version of that box can be made. I've been showing, in other words, this with the rounded, much higher poly versions here, which, you know, may or may not be necessary depending on what it is that you want to do. So what we can do is we can make another version. So let's see, what have I got in here? Just this and this. All right, so I'm going to move this. Oh, I'm sorry, hang on. You can see my keys now. I'm going to move this to the first level. I've only got this in level 2, so we're going to bypass level 2 and we're going to go right to level 3 and change it to orthographic view again so that I can see my drawing plans and of course view 1. All right, so first, of course, Shift S, cursor to center, just to make sure everything's centered up. A lot easier to correct mistakes that way. Shift A to add a cube. Heck, you could do it with a mesh, but I'm going to grab this. I'm going to move it to approximately in place and scale it down. Now, of course, if you already have the back portion in place, you could probably just duplicate that cube, but whatever. Kind of center this up, scale it down a little. Oh, the only reason why the scaling is working this way is because I have it on, of course, bounding box center and scale Z. about right. We can always correct any slight errors later. All right, so I'm going to go to 7. And let's grab Y and move this kind of into place and scoot down. Now, the great thing is, of course, we can even see the width. Scale Y. Now, the thing is, one of the things is, of course, if I was putting this box here, I'd actually leave this somewhat larger. Grab Y, and I would just put this into place there, and then I would Shift D, grab Y, and move out this box, and let's see, that says scale Y, and I would make this much thinner just to be this outer layer here. And you know what? That's going to work for us. So, all right, fine. So I've got these two boxes, one next to the other. Control 3. What I really want to do, though, is grab Y. I want to move this out. I want to rotate this, rotate -90, so that this is facing up. Okay, cool. Just my prejudice and preference in how I like to do this. I'm going to tab into it, A to deselect everything, and then Control R. And I know I get a count of these. Where do I get a count of these? There we are, down on the lower left-hand side of my screen. It says number of cuts. So I want 17 of them. Double that's 34. One less is 33. So I want 33, I think. And A to deselect. All right. Why do I want 33? Because I want to select every other one, and I don't want the last one to end on a lower. I want the ones on the ends to be high. So what am I going to do? I'm going to go to 7. Now, I don't want to grab these faces on the outside. So I'm going to hit B. Just grab it only from the top to the top. Okay, great. The sides are not selected. Marvelous. Let's go to Control 3. Oh, wait, actually, you know what? Let's leave it at 7, top view right now. Just remember before, we went down to Select and we used Checker Deselect. And, oh, I must have miscounted somehow. 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. And I got 17. But we got one that's down. All right. Let me try that again. So 32. Select, checker, deselect. All right, well, the important thing is the top one and the bottom one are now selected. Okay, cool. I'm going to go to Control 3, and we're going to do E, and it's already, since it's flat, and I've got it, like I said, I have a preference for going, for doing things in this orientation. You'll notice the Z direction got a blue line, which means I can just lift my cursor up and it won't go left or right. I don't want to make it too tall. That will do. A to deselect. I'm going to go back to vertex mode and then tab out of the whole thing. I'm going to rotate this 90 degrees, and I'm going to go over here to my materials. I'm going to grab a material. I'm going to make it the dark hull gray. Whereas this one, I'm going to grab a material and simply make it hull gray. I'm going to grab this G, Y, and just make them touch, right? Okay, cool. So now this is in place. It even matches those wavy lines drawn by Alan. Now I'm going to bring in the rest of our model. All right, and I've got, of course, I have a few things in place, all in the same place. All right, let me move this box and these items here. So I'm going to move those to number 4 just for now. All right, and then include number 2. All right, so there we go. I guess I got to move this back to 2. All righty, so there we go. We've got a box. We've got the darker outer edge and the hull colored inner edge. As you can see here, that's this outer one is darker. This one that intersects the hull that it rests on is just a rectangle, and it's the same color as the rest of the hull. It's lighter. So I think that should do it for the, oh dear. Oh, right, number 2, Eric. 3 is what I want to show here, 3 and 1. There we go. So I think that works. And I'll do a quick setup and render. And I'll be right back as soon as that render is finished. Okay. Even though these are simple, elongated cubes or extrusions that are just squarish, I think they still look pretty good. They look very similar to the real thing, even though the real thing would be much higher poly and are wavy. As soon as you start to get a little bit away, and you'll notice that the photograph of the real model actually shows that this is outside the warp engine a little more than Alan's drawings had us place ours. So I am going to change that. I'm going to pick both of these items. Okay, I'm going to grab Y. And that reminds me a little more, that looks a little more, maybe too much. Grab Y, move it back just a little bit. There we go. I'm going to re-render this. And I'm going to turn off that darn transparency here. And I'll be back as soon as this is done rendering again. And even though this isn't quite finished yet, I think if you agree with me, this is looking very much like the original. I've still got that reference image here. And even though these are not rounded. So as soon as you start to pull away a little bit, you're not going to see that rounded detail anyway. I meant to mention that this waffle texture that I had you make up here with these thousands of little pyramids and the array that we used in order to generate them, you could use a flat plane there and either put a texture on it that was either one color or perhaps hinted that there were details there, like you could put a drawn grid on there, or you could put a flat plane and you could use a bump map texture on there. It would be a lot lower poly, but as soon as, I hate to say it, as soon as you go to any bump map texture, well, bump map textures are usually pretty good. If you use any sort of transparency setting, there's very little difference in how long it takes to render between a map with a transparency setting and actual holes cut in geometry. So I'm going to keep cutting the actual holes in geometry and raising actual bump maps so that I can do just an off-the-cuff render, and everything is exactly where I want it without doing extra jumps through hoops. But my way is generally higher poly. So here's the low poly version of these chambers at the back of the warp engines, and then you can duplicate them and put them on the opposite side just like we did with the others. Thanks, guys. I'll see you in the next tutorial when we start to tackle some of the details that go in the trough. Oh, don't forget to save your work. Hang on. So, File, Save, and I will see you next tutorial.